Hi everyone. I've been hired as the fortune teller for this session. I'm supposed to tell you what will happen after 2015. Now usually fortune tellers tell nice stories because that makes clients come back. Unfortunately, I'm a bit too worried to do that, but I'll try. So I guess we all know these, the Millennium Development Goals to be achieved by 2015. We know that they will not be achieved, certainly not in many low-income countries, but we're already in the phase of negotiating what comes after 2015. There are three specific health-related goals in there. And people who are involved in these negotiations, which have begun already, say that there will probably only one health goal in the next version. Of course, we don't know. We can try to fight this, we can try to change this, but that's what most people seem to agree on. Only one goal, and that it probably will be something like universal health coverage, heavily promoted by the World Health Organization and by many other countries. Universal health coverage, if that is the goal after 2015, is it good news or bad news for the fight against AIDS? I think it could be bad news, because to me universal health coverage sounds like health for all by the year 2000, but then by the year 2100 or so, and it may include the fatal flaw that was in the Alma-Ata Declaration. And I'm reading it. Primary health care is essential health care, made universally accessible, at a cost that the community and country can afford to maintain at every stage of their development in the spirit of self-reliance and self-determination. What that meant for people with AIDS in low-income countries, it was a death sentence. A death sentence for the sake of self-reliance. Because a lot of countries could simply not afford AIDS treatment. And during a number of years, around the year 2000, that was the prevailing idea of development assistance with regards to AIDS in low-income countries. Focus on prevention, no treatment, because it is not sustainable. And so if that is going to be the future, again, if the new version of universal health coverage does not move away from this idea, then we're in trouble. Now, universal health coverage could also be good news for the fight against AIDS. I think AIDS exceptionalism, as we have known it, has run its course. I think we have to prepare for a world in which AIDS will be considered as any other disease. And if we're lucky, that means that other health issues will receive the same commitment, the same energy and the same resources as AIDS has received. But if we're unlucky, it means something else. And we have to understand how truly exceptional this global AIDS response has been. It has proposed, imposed, achieved to a certain extent a true paradigm shift, a Copernican change on looking at things from national responsibility, as expressed in the Alma-Ata Declaration, with some external assistance, okay, but temporary assistance. The global AIDS response moved towards human responsibility, or national and international responsibility. And it may have had some negative side effects in the sense of national deresponsibilization, but in general, it allowed to do things, it allowed to provide AIDS treatment in countries that would not be able to pay for it themselves. But this new paradigm is implicit. It's not very clear, there are no binding commitments, and it's fragile. There is a way to strengthen this, to give it a more solid foundation, and that is to ground it in the right to health, or health seen as a human right with corresponding entitlements and national and global dues. And that's something that Michel Kazachkin mentioned, and that is really what happened, but only for HIV/AIDS so far. And it's not very safe. It's still fragile. But we see that the AIDS movement is moving in this direction. This was the invitation for the march. We can end AIDS, mobilization for economic justice and human rights, seeing health as a human right. But if you do see health as a human right, the right to health does not really support the prioritization of a single disease. It is very difficult to argue or to support from a right to health position that antiretroviral treatment is available in places where cesarean sections are not. And so perhaps universal health coverage could be the practical translation of the right to health. How do we make sure that universal health coverage really is a translation of the right to health? I think my most important point is that we have to question or challenge the notion of sustainability. It comes back again and again. I've heard at this conference saying, many people or several people who said that even the present AIDS response is not sustainable, it's a bubble. But sustainability is not an absolute concept, it is relative, it is related to political choices. Imagine that we agree that the responsibility for a school is at the level of a city. Then the sustainability of that school depends on what the people of that city can afford. Now, if you decide that the responsibility for education is a national responsibility, then the level of education that you can provide is different. Then it depends on the wealth of that nation. And you can have a similar reasoning with health. If you think that politically the responsibility for health is only a national one, then sustainability means what that nation can afford in the long run. But if we agree that the responsibility is also an international one, is also a global one, then sustainability means something else. Then sustainability means what the global community can afford. And that is a much higher level in a lot of countries in the world. So we really have to challenge that. The word sustainability is too often, too frequently used without being specific on what we mean with it. I think we have to clarify what we mean with shared responsibility. We will have to move to some kind of global convention or agreement where governments and civil society make binding commitments, where we no longer toss around the Abuja Declaration and the 15% and the 0.7% of the high-income countries, etc., but where we make clear commitments towards each other. Because that's the only way of making the resources more reliable in the long run and to allow to plan for the future response. And the third point, this is an old paper and I presented it in Mexico already, but I think it's now more valid than ever. We have to move away from a purely vertical approach to a diagonal approach. And I'm very worried when I hear, for example, that the Global Fund is becoming more focused on the 3 diseases, because ultimately that will be an excuse for many governments to reduce support to the Global Fund. So we have to show that the fight against AIDS is supporting universal health coverage, is supporting a broader fight for global justice and health for all. Conclusion, and this is my personal opinion, I think universal health coverage will work for the fight against AIDS, but if and only if AIDS fighters work for universal health coverage and make it their own. I think that can be and should be and will be the legacy of the fight against AIDS. Real health for all, real universal health coverage, not what we had 15 years ago. Thank you.